I can see it.
Awesome, thank you. Hello everyone, again, my name's Jay Meszar. I'm a senior applications expert for IMAGINiT on our reality capture services team. And today we're going to talk a little bit about Field 360 and really a lot of the updates that they've done over, well, the past several versions actually. So, you know, going to kind of throw a little bit, a lot at you, and hopefully some of this will kind of kick some questions at the end here, so not everybody's kind of silent, and you know, I look forward to those, right? So before we jump into Field 360, I'm actually going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about myself. I've been in the AEC or reality capture space for about 28 years. It's been a long time. Started at IMAGINiT about 16 years ago now. So I've been here a long time and kind of seen a lot of things. And, you know, the journey's really been fun to see the different changes that we've gone through with reality capture. And you know, even the Autodesk products from where they started. So, you know, on our reality capture services team, you know, I've been here about 12 years, I guess. So, you know, that's a long time to see the different technologies that have come through. You know, when I started, there was scanners that really just ran DOS, and you know, so they weren't intuitive. They were kind of big and clunky, and so where we are now, being able to use things like Field 360 has really changed the game when it comes to 3D laser scanning. So let's take a look at the agenda and see what we're going to talk about here. You know, for some of you who've been using Field 360 for a while, might be a little bit of review here. Some simple things that, you know, I threw into this presentation simply because it's something I get a lot of questions on. And so, again, for some of you, you're going to be like, well, that's not really an update. But I want to kind of introduce everyone to what Field 360 is capable of, and in some cases, what we can't do with it. So we're going to start by simply talking about the operating systems that Field 360 is capable to use, or that we can use the app on. And then we'll jump in and we'll talk about hardware compatibility, Field 360, what's it work with? What scanners can we use with Field 360? And then we'll dive into the app itself and talk about scan registration. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, registration, that is simply the stitching together of one scan to the next and being able to ultimately create that full 3D point cloud with multiple scan setups. Once your data is into Field 360, a lot of times what we've had to do in the past is we've had to kind of go back to the office and we've had to wait to clean up any unwanted data. Maybe we've got a bunch of data that the scanner collected from far away that we just simply don't need in the data set we're working with. So we'll talk about that cleanup and how to get rid of some of that data. Speaking of data, we are also going to jump in and talk about supplemental data. And I use that term as a way of talking about adding data that the scanner itself doesn't just pick up for us, or maybe sometimes the scanner's a little far away from to pick up some data. And so how do we add that without having to add another scan setup to the mix? And then of course, the very last thing we see there, we'll talk about how we use that to get something, maybe a start into AutoCAD or maybe Revit, okay? So I'm gonna go through a lot here. As I said earlier, I want you to feel free to ask your questions at the end of this thing here, and I'll be happy to answer what I can. Whatever I can, I will certainly do the research to try and find an answer. So let's jump in. All right, so the operating systems, right? What does Field 360 run on? What devices can we use? What, again, operating systems can we use? So to start, iOS, right? If you've got an Apple phone, if you've got an Apple iPad, you can run Field 360. Now, I want to be a little bit clearer on that here. You know, depending on the scanner that we're using, those Apple devices running iOS may or may not be the perfect device. And what I mean by that is if we're going to do a large job, let's say with a lot of data and stitching together, we may not want to use something like an iPhone or a starter iPad. We may want to jump in and look at an iPad Pro just because of the processing power and what it's capable of. I'll give you an example. I'm sitting here with an iPad in front of me. I've got an iPhone in front of me. Both are Pro models, but the iPhone that I have simply doesn't have the processor that's built in to the iPad. So I try not to use my phone for those really big jobs. All right. So Android, and I know iOS and Android don't really get along, and we all like to fight over the messaging systems, but you know, we can run an Android tablet, an Android phone. Once again, we just want to make sure the same thing it happens with Android that we do with iOS, that the processor being used is strong enough to run Field 360. All right, so those are the two OSs that we can do. Unfortunately, one of the ones that everybody asks for is Windows, and we currently can't do Windows. So that Windows tablet you have, or you know, maybe even the very small laptop, you know, not yet. Hopefully, you know, maybe Leica will put it in someday, but just not there yet on the Windows devices. All right. So when we come to and talk about the iOS devices or the Android devices, we often want to talk about licensing and how do we purchase that license of Field 360, and how do we use that license on a mobile device? So first thing, the license is acquired by logging into the app. That login is linked to your Register 360 Plus, or in some cases, the Register 360 Plus BLK Edition license. So long story short, what we do with our software, desktop software licensing, is we take that license number, put it into a portal online. The iPad is, or Android device, if you will, is capable of then going out, pulling that license from that portal, and we have a license. Now, I like to just point out here that that license doesn't mean that Field 360 is limited by not having Wi-Fi on a job site or not having access to cellular data on a job site. That's a question that I get asked all the time. Right? So we don't have to have access to the internet necessarily on the job. What we can do is we can take the iPad or iPhone or Android device, and we simply log in before we leave the office, before we leave our home, or, you know, if you forget one of those, stop at a Starbucks on your way, connect to their Wi-Fi, and go ahead and then pull the license. That license is going to be good for about 30 days. Once you hit that 30-day mark, if you still have not connected your license for a Field 360 to the internet, well, then it automatically logs you out of the app, and then you would need to have a connection to connect it back together or to reacquire the license. All right, let's jump to hardware compatibility. You know, there was a time when we had different apps and different tools to work with specific scanners. You know, one of the ones that comes to my mind, like I said, I've been around a while, is the P-series scanners. Right? We used to have to go about a remote desktop into those devices. So let's take a look before I get too deep into that and which devices actually work. Right? The Leica BLK360 G1, the original BLK360. You may or may not know that Leica is no longer selling this device, but yes, it still works with Field 360, and it will continue to have support for a while now through Leica. So yes, this device still works with the Field 360 application. And you know, this particular scanner, if for those of you again who've been using scanners for a while, if you remember, the G1 used to work with Autodesk's Recap. It no longer does. It works with Field 360. And that Field 360 application, to me, when it came to the in-field registration, was just huge for the G1, right? Of course, with the G1, we can also now get the smaller, faster, lighter, et cetera, G2. G2 is Leica's latest BLK360 device. And if you haven't checked out this scanner yet, reach out because this thing is just fantastic. It's small, it's lightweight, it's easy to carry, and of course works with the Field 360 app. So there's a bunch we can do with this thing. Then there's Leica's newer BLK2Go devices. So this is one of those update things that we were talking about when we advertised this demonstration. BLK2Go, it works with Field 360 now. For those of you who have had one for a while, you know may still be using the BLK Live app, which is fine. That still works, right? But it also works with Field 360. The new BLK2Go Pulse. You can see here, you can attach your phone to the top of the scanner, and of course, we can run Field 360 right along and collect data with the Pulse. Now, again, I gotta say, if you haven't checked this out yet, it is a different experience than the BLK2Go. The interface just really, in my mind, allows you to see what you're collecting as you go along so much better in the Field 360 app. And again, you know, you could use the BLK Live app, but I really like the Field app here. And then there's, of course, the ever popular RTC 360. You know, this thing's just a workhorse. It collects data very fast. As you can see, it's a more beefy scanner and collects data at a much tighter density than we might get with the rest of the scanners that you see above it. And then the last the P-series scanners, these things have been around for a while, those survey grade scanners that, again, they're big, but man, they are awesome with the data that they collect. It's almost like looking at a picture, but they also work with Field 360. And again, for those of you out there who have used these in the past, you may remember the old days of, trying to remote desktop in to the scanner and trying to use the screen. And, while that worked, it wasn't the best workflow. We didn't really have access to the data. Now we have access to the data right on the iPad, and we can take a look at registration and targets and so on and so forth. All right. So I'm going to jump over and talk a little bit about scan registration. And, being around scanners for the time I have, the workflow for me started out as being able to go and use scan targets to collect and do our scan registration. So what I want to do is give you a little bit of insight for those who have never seen this as to how we used to collect data. So historically, we had to have those targets, or the process was just really, really rough and took a long time. So let's take a look. And, obviously you can see here, this is Field 360. And I've got a bunch of scans on here, but the two that are highlighted are Scan 1 and Scan 2. Now, again, historically speaking, we had to go ahead and place individual scan targets that looked something like this. Right? And what we look for is 3 common points between each scan setup. So with Scan 1, I would go in and I would collect those targets, and then I would give each one of them a name. And then when I ran Scan 2, I would then go and collect those same targets as before. And then when I went to Scan 3, I would use 3 different locations for those targets. So there was a lot of leapfrogging and keeping track of names. And if you did it really well, you kind of kept a notebook beside you, maybe a field notebook, and you wrote down the individual targets and where they were. Right? So again, we would keep going, and we would go scan 3 to 4 and 4 to 5 and so on and so forth. Well, we don't necessarily have to do that anymore. We can come over and use visual registration, or depending on the scanner that we have, we can use the Viz system on those scanners. And by the way, that Viz system is in the RTC 360 and also the BLK 360 G2. And what that does is uses a series of cameras, an altimeter, and GPS system to be able to then go from scan to scan, and the scanner will know where each scan is. So as we go along, we run Scan 1, and then we simply run Scan 2. Now, when we're done with Scan 1 and Scan 2, we can tell the Field 360 app to simply go ahead and put those 2 scans together, or if we really want, we can manually come in and look at those 2 scans and see how they fit together, which, by the way, my recommendation would be to do a quick check of these while you're out in the field. As long as our scans line up, we optimize, we create a link, and we're on our way. 2 to 3 to 4, 5, and so on. as I run through, and then you can see I'm going 1 to 8. So this is all being done in the Field 360 app. I do not have to do this in the office. And then of course, scan 9, 10, and continuing on until we get all the way complete. Now, in the past, this is where we stopped, right? We got this together, looked great, and then we said, okay, well, let's go and finish it in the desktop. And we just took the data off the scanner. In this case, it was an RTC, took the data off the scanner, set it to the desktop, and we tightened up our registration by adding some extra links. Well, now with the newer versions of the app, we can actually go ahead and do that tightening up right in the app. We can create multiple links to a scan. We can create closed loops on Field 360. And if you look at scans, let's see what we got here, 5, 6, and 7. That creates a triangular loop. You maybe can't see 6 there so well. So let's look at 1, 2, and 3. Or 1, 3, and 8. All of those have closed loops. And again, I'm getting my registration nice and tight before I leave the field. Why is that so important to me? Well, that's important to me because what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to stand there and look at this, in my case on my iPad, and I want to say, does this look like where I'm standing? I have my eyes on the field or on the data that I've collected, and I have my eyes on the reality of what's out there. So I can check all of this before I ever leave the site, and that way I don't have any questions. I'm not sitting there saying, does this go together correctly or not? Did I miss a scan somewhere? And now I'm sitting in the office and say, oh, geez, I bought this scanner so I didn't have to revisit the site, but now I'm revisiting the site. Well, we don't do that with Field 360 because we can look at everything right in front of us on the iPad. All right. Let's talk a little bit about scan cleanup. And when we talk about cleanup, we're talking about, the process of removing unwanted points from the data. No matter what scanner you use or what app you use, you're bound to get data that you simply don't care about, don't want to use, or maybe there's a window on the site and you've scanned through the glass and it's kind of giving you some weird data out to the side. Once again, historically speaking, we did all of this when we were back in the office. Now, again, I can go here to the app and I can say, you know what? Let me get rid of that unwanted data. And again, that could be people walking through. That could be machinery moving through. Maybe we've got forklifts or trucks or whatever kind of going through. I can get rid of that data here. Now, I know, well, actually, let me hold that thought for a moment and let's go to the next step here. The Field 360 cleaning tool, which you can see there highlighted in green, that allows us to click on the data, come over, and you can't see it here, but there's a rectangle that goes around the data, which selects it, just like we would do with our mouse. And then we can tell it to delete inside that rectangle or delete outside that rectangle. In this case, I would delete outside. And so from there, I can spin the data to the side, create that rectangle once again, hit done, it selects, I delete outside or inside if I choose, and my data is fully cleaned up. And I've gotten rid of a lot of that unwanted data. Now, once again, I'm going to repeat myself over and over again here. Remember that if we feel that, oh, geez, maybe I made a mistake and I got rid of something that I didn't want to get rid of, we can undo that here in Field 360. So we're staring at our data in the field and we see, oh, geez, I got rid of a wall by accident. I can get rid of all of that very easily by resetting the clipping for this point cloud. All right, let's talk a little bit about our supplemental data, right? If in Leica, we call this a Geo-Tag. Now, what in the world is a Geo-Tag? Well, my definition of a Geo-Tag is data that's in the form of pictures, videos, documents, voice narration, text, and by the way, I'm going left to right across that dialogue that you see on the right, and 3D LiDAR data, right? So let's talk about this for a second, because why do we want this? Why do we care? Well, we simply care because when we go across our data here and we say, oh, well, we got pictures taken from the RTC 360. Great. What if that picture is from 15 feet away and we have a label that's 2 inch by 1 inch? Well, that's a pretty small label, and any information that's going to be on that label probably not going to get picked up from 15 feet away. So let's go back to the old days, right? We would write that down. As the days went on, we might even just take our cell phone. Some people say, oh, I got a cell phone. I don't need that. I take pictures with my phone. Sure, fair enough. However, I would argue that many people take those pictures. Yeah, maybe they take 100 pictures of a job site. They get them back to the office, and if they remember to pull the pictures off of their phone and put them in a directory like they should, even if they do that, they're looking at the data and they're saying, man, I just don't know where that picture was from. So how is this better? Well, this is better because if I use my mobile device, and again, I'm using an iPad or an iPhone, I can take a picture and I can attach it where it goes in my point cloud data. So I can see from where the scan location was, that picture, click on it, and then be able to open that up and say, oh, well, there's my label. It's serial number, whatever, whatever, whatever. That's very beneficial, right? So then we have the option for the videos. Think about it for a second. Maybe you have somebody in the office that, well, they've never visited the site before, and sometimes a picture just doesn't do it justice. You can take that video with your mobile device and attach it where you started in the point cloud, and they will be able to then walk through and see what's going on, giving them a better feel of what it's like to be there. Documents, pretty self-explanatory. Voice narration, self-explanatory, I think. When I have text there, I'm simply saying that, well, this text is just a form of you typing in some information, maybe some notes or something like that. Now, I'm sure there are folks on this call that are sitting there saying, well, gee, you know, he's completely disregarding targets and saying not to use targets, and I'm not. Sometimes you just got to use them, right? Sometimes we can't get that visual align tool to have enough common data to put our data together. Sometimes we got to use a target. Sometimes we got to put that target over a known coordinate. Whatever the reason you're using them is, you can see in the image to the right, there is a little icon that looks like a target. I can use the camera on my mobile device to take a picture of that target, set the point at the center of the target, and give that target a name if I wish. All right, last one, 3D LiDAR data. Oh wait, why do I need that? Because I've got a scanner, right? I can run a scan and have that data, in which you can. But sometimes when we run a scan, we might have set the scanner up at a point where it just doesn't get that one location that's, maybe it's not really important, but you really wish you had it. So on the newer iPads, one of the things that we can do is we can go ahead and use the LiDAR camera built into the iPad to collect 3D point cloud data. We can attach that to our point cloud that we took with our scanner. And if we do everything correctly, the data we took with our iPad lays right on top of the data that we have with our scanner. All right. So let's talk a little bit about modeling. Now, I am not under the illusion that I'm going to be able to do a full model with this Field 360 app, right? It's certainly not going to replace something like Revit, right? I'm certainly not going to replace this with or with any AutoCAD drawn data. But however, what I can do here is I can come in and I can use the app, which you're seeing right here. All I'm doing is dragging my finger right along the point cloud. And as I drag my finger, it draws the lines. And of course, anything that I don't collect, I can go back and either edit or use to make it more accurate over in the app. And you're seeing here that I'm now in the room and I'm going to give it a ceiling height, which is of course going to give me the height of our walls. Okay. And now we're going to jump over, or we are in a second here. There we go. We're going to jump over and we're going to add a door where we click 3 points around our door. And of course, once we're done, we hit save. And now this data can be exported to a DXF or an IFC file. On my iPad, I can throw it to Dropbox. I can throw it just to the iPad itself. And I'm good to go. Right? It's interesting to me that I can do this, but not a lot of people know about it. Not a lot of people have taken the time to look into it. And again, this certainly isn't going to replace AutoCAD. It's not going to replace Revit, but it's going to give us a start. okay? Or at least a rough idea of what's out there for maybe somebody who is using the data but doesn't know how to work with point cloud data. All right. Whoop. So what I'd like to do now is I'm just going to do a quick demonstration. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. I'm going to bring this over, and I'm going to share my screen again. So what you're looking at is the screen of my iPad. And of course, I'm doing it this way due to limitations with the GoTo. But I've got my RTC 360 turned on here. And so I just wanted to give a demonstration of this scanner, and maybe if we have time, another scanner, to just show you really how easy this is to use. And so right now, I know I'm not connected to a scanner, so I'm gonna go and I'm gonna create a connection, and we'll join here. All right, so I'm now connected to my scanner, and really just being able to come in, create a job, give it a name, excuse me, hit save, go into the data. Look how quickly I'm doing this, as if I'm on a job site, right? I can come in and then be able to control my scanner simply by using the iPad. Now, when I'm using this, I can say, all right, well, I want to do a low density scan and I don't want any pictures. So I'll go ahead and I'll hit the play button here. And if we look at the very bottom of the screen there, just under where it says scanning, in about 30 seconds, we're gonna have some data that's gonna pop in to the Field 360 application. Now there might be a little bit of silence here, just because the scanner is gonna make some noise. Oh, it's not as bad as I thought it was gonna be. So you can see the line at the bottom. It's very thin there, but it is going ahead and going across, showing me the progress of the scanner. Now, if you can turn your attention to the top right corner of the app, you're gonna see double arrows there, where in those double arrows, they're gonna start to flash here in just a second. There they go. And there's my data. So I'm simply able to come in here and go to 3D, and I've got point cloud data ready to go. So then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick up that scanner and I'm gonna move it. Now, for those of you who are interested, this is an RTC 360. So if we look, we can see that the scanner has moved in our map view. It's given us a blinking light. We know the location of the scanner while we're looking at Field 360. So I can go ahead and I can run another scan. Now, while that scan starts to process, I could come in here and go Field 360, and you can see I did a black and white scan. But maybe I want a picture of that little picture on the wall. What I can do with that is take my Field 360 app while the scanner is scanning and come in and create a Geo-Tag. I'm going to go ahead and tell it, yep, let's use that, and let's put that right there in the point cloud. Now I have a geotag over there with that picture. And then I can go back to map view, and I can see the other scan is just about finished, and the data should be populating here any second. There it is. We can see down at the bottom here, we have a quick link button. Bang. I'm done. I'm registered. I'm ready to move the scanner and go again. Right? Or if I want to, I can go ahead and take a look at that and make sure that it is registered. Done. Okay, so the value here is that I can keep scanning. I can be collecting data, of course, while the scanner is scanning. And so, you know, a lot of times when I see people scanning, see a lot of people standing around kind of waiting for the scanner to finish. Well, on a real job, you don't have to do that. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to stop sharing this here, and I'm going to share my other screen. Bear with me just 1 second. All right, let's go to Field 360 here. Okay, so I'm actually on my phone right now, and I've got the BLK sitting here ready to go. So as you can see, well, maybe you can't see, the top right corner, I'm not connected to the BLK to go, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a connection there. All right. Once again, using Field 360 to create a job. All right, and we'll go in, and I can now start the scanner. And if I start walking using Field 360 to collect data with the BLK to go. And of course, when I'm done, I can simply stop. And there's my scan. Right? Now I could take this on another walk and do that. I could look at this in 3D. So you can see that one little walk, just those few seconds, I was able to go ahead and collect that amount of data with a BLK to go. Granted, not as accurate as what I might get with an RTC 360 or a BLK 360, but boy, that's pretty darn quick. And if we look at this from the top, right, we can go in here and we can start adjusting anything we want to rotate and get rid of any of this unwanted data. Oop. We'll call that good, done. And I'll delete outside. Point cloud cleaned up. Ready to take it back to the office, right? Or in some cases, I might be sending this data to Reality Capture Studio. It's a whole different Leica product. I might be exporting it. Whatever I might be doing, I can do right here with the Field 360 app. So if I take I take my scan, I might be able to say upload to RCS, Reality Capture Studio. Or Reality Cloud Studio, my mistake, I misspoke. E57 file, PTX, right? CSV file for the trajectory. Or if I simply want to get my data back, I can hit reset clipping. Yep, okay, great. And now all my points are back. All right. So I know it probably went just a little bit long there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause and open it up for questions.
Right. Jay, are you able to see the questions pane, or is that just something I can see right now?
I don't believe I can see it, at least not at the moment.
Okay. I'll just read them off to you if you're good with that.
Sure.
Okay. A few questions came through. The first question is, what about Android emulators on Windows?
I'd have to look into that. I'll be honest. I probably wouldn't trust it, but I've never tried to make that work.
Next question, I can answer this one. Will the presentation recording be available for future viewing? Yes. So you'll receive a follow-up email sometime late next week with the link so you can watch on demand. And then next question, will it show the location of the scanner for the BLK 360 G1 with the new update?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Yeah. Will it show the location of the scanner for the BLK 360 G1 with the new update?
It will not.
Let's see what else we got here. Looks like another question. Can a second person use Field 360 and take photos while the other scans?
You wouldn't be able to be connected to the same device. That's your limitation. However, if you would like, that second person could be taking the pictures. You could add them after the fact. But to be honest with you, that's kind of more work than just doing it with the iPad yourself. At least that's my opinion.
Next question, can you stick together the scans from the RTC with the BLK?
Oh, Sarah, I lost your mic there a little bit. You're fading out.
All right, sorry about that, you guys. Can you stitch together the scans from the RTC with the BLK?
You can do that in the desktop. You can't do that here in the Field app, at least not yet.
All right, that looks like all of the questions I have in the questions pane, unless someone else has something else they want to ask. Right. Looks looks like another one. Does Leica have plans to include P50 survey workflows and targeting?
I'm sorry, Sarah, one more time.
Says, does Leica have plans to include P50 survey workflows and targeting?
I have no way of knowing what Leica has plans for. I do know that you can connect to the P50 and you can collect targets, but there's no, if you're looking for things like a traverse or something like that, I don't know of any plans to do that. And honestly, Leica wouldn't tell me that necessarily. They kind of keep their new features close to the vest.
Okay, and can you have two